The cargo bay of the merchant vessel, Stellar Wanderer, hummed with the usual mixture of alien conversations and mechanical noises. Among the diverse crew of 8 different species, one figure sat alone in the corner, methodically cleaning his sidearm with practiced precision. Marcus Chen appeared unremarkable to most observers, average height for a human, dark hair kept short, wearing the standard gray jumpsuit of a ship's maintenance worker. His movements were economical, almost mechanical, as he disassembled and reassembled his weapon with the kind of muscle memory that spoke of countless repetitions. The Zephyrian navigator, Clicks, chittered with amusement as he watched the human work. His crystalline exoskeleton caught the artificial light as he turned to his companion, a hulking Thrakari warrior named Gorvash. "Look at the little human playing with his toy gun," Click said in standard galactic, his voice carrying the natural harmony that made his species such excellent diplomats. "Does he think that tiny weapon will protect him if we encounter real trouble?" Gorvash's 4 eyes focused on Marcus, his tusked mouth curling into what passed for a grin among his people. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with muscles that could crush steel, the Thrakari had little respect for what he saw as weak, soft humans. "The human species still amuses me," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "They swagger around the galaxy as if they belong among real warriors. But look at this one. Quiet, small, hiding in corners. This is what Earth sends to represent them among the stars?" Captain Vexitar, a reptilian saurian with scales that shifted color based on her mood, observed the exchange from her elevated position near the bridge entrance. Her species had been exploring space for millennia before humans had even discovered fire, yet something about the quiet maintenance worker intrigued her. Still, she said nothing as her crew continued their commentary. The ship's engineer, a gelatinous Blobian named Flux, undulated closer to the group. His translucent form pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as he spoke through his translation device. "I have worked with many humans before. They are adequate mechanics, nothing more. This one, Marcus, he fixes things quietly and stays out of the way. Very boring species, really. No grand achievements, no remarkable technologies. How they ever achieved interstellar travel remains a mystery to many of us." Marcus continued his weapon maintenance, giving no indication that he understood their conversation. His face remained impassive, focused entirely on his task. This only seemed to encourage the alien's commentary. A sleek Valerian female named Sira slithered closer, her serpentine body moving with hypnotic grace. Her species were known for their intelligence and their particularly sharp tongues. "Perhaps the human is deaf," she hissed, her forked tongue tasting the air. "Or maybe he simply knows his place in the natural order. Humans are a young species, barely worthy of notice. Their homeworld is unremarkable, their achievements pale compared to the great civilizations that came before them." The newest crew member, a Centaurian named Drax, whose horse-like lower body gave him an imposing presence, stamped one hoof against the metal deck. "I have heard stories about human warriors," he said, his voice carrying skepticism. "They claim to be fierce fighters, but look at this one. He maintains equipment and keeps his head down. Where's this famous human courage we hear about in their propaganda broadcasts?" Marcus finished reassembling his weapon and holstered it with a smooth, practiced motion. He stood slowly, his movements controlled and deliberate. For a moment, his dark eyes met each of the aliens who had been discussing him, but he said nothing. Instead, he simply nodded politely and began walking toward his quarters. "See how he runs away when confronted," Clicks chittered with delight. "Typical human behavior. They avoid conflict whenever possible because they know they cannot win against superior species." The comments followed Marcus down the corridor, but his expression never changed. He had heard similar words on dozens of ships, from hundreds of aliens who thought they understood humanity based on limited interactions with merchants, technicians, and colonists. They saw what they expected to see, a quiet, unremarkable human doing unremarkable work. As the ship entered hyperspace en route to the Outer Rim territories, Marcus settled into his small quarters and activated his personal terminal. The screen displayed what appeared to be routine maintenance schedules and equipment diagnostics, but a careful observer might have noticed that his fingers moved across the interface with unusual speed and precision. Hidden beneath layers of encryption, other information flowed across the display. Shipping manifests that didn't match the cargo hold's contents, crew records with suspicious gaps, and communication logs that suggested their peaceful merchant mission was anything but routine. 3 days into their journey, Captain Vexitar called a general meeting in the main conference room. Her scales had shifted to a deep purple, indicating serious concern. "We have received a distress signal from the mining colony on Kepler 442b, she announced, her reptilian features grave. "The automated systems indicate a complete communication blackout 47 hours ago." The crew exchanged worried glances. Kepler 442b was located in a particularly dangerous sector of space known for pirate activity and worse things that lurked in the darkness between stars. It was also their scheduled destination for what was supposed to be a routine cargo delivery. "Perhaps we should contact the Colonial Defense Force," suggested Flux, his gelatinous form rippling with nervous energy. "This sounds like a situation that requires military intervention." Gorvash snorted dismissively. "The nearest CDF patrol is 6 days away. By then, if there are survivors, they will be long dead. Besides, we have contracts to fulfill and cargo to deliver." Captain Vextar's scales darkened further. "The cargo we carry is medical supplies and food synthesizers. If colonists are in trouble, we may be their only hope." She paused, looking around the room. "However, if we encounter hostile forces, we are not equipped for combat. Our defensive capabilities are minimal." "What kind of threats are we talking about?" asked Drax, his equine features showing concern. "Pirates, most likely," the captain replied. "But there have been reports of something worse in this sector. Ships found drifting with no survivors, their hulls opened like tin cans. Some say it's the work of the Void Stalkers." A chill seemed to settle over the room at the mention of that name. The Void Stalkers were a mysterious race that had appeared in recent years, leaving destruction in their wake. Little was known about them except that they showed no mercy and left no survivors. Marcus, who had been sitting quietly in the back of the room, finally spoke. His voice was calm and measured, with a slight accent that was difficult to place. "What's our estimated arrival time at Kepler 442b?" 18 hours, Captain Vextar replied, somewhat surprised that the usually silent human had contributed to the discussion. "And our current defensive capabilities?" The captain's scales shifted to a lighter shade, indicating puzzlement at the maintenance workers' sudden interest in tactical matters. "We have standard deflector shields, some light plasma cannons, and whatever personal weapons the crew carries. Nothing that would be effective against a serious threat." Marcus nodded thoughtfully, then returned to his quiet observation. But Clix had noticed something in the human's tone, a subtle shift that suggested knowledge beyond his apparent station. "Why do you ask, human?" the Zephyrian inquired, his crystalline form catching the light as he leaned forward. "Surely a maintenance worker doesn't concern himself with ship's defenses." "Just curious," Marcus replied with a slight shrug. "I like to understand the full situation when my life might be at stake." The meeting concluded with the decision to proceed to Kepler 442b, but to maintain high alert status and prepare for the possibility of immediate departure if they encountered hostile forces. As the crew dispersed, several aliens continued their whispered commentary about the strange human who asked military questions but claimed to be nothing more than a repair technician. That evening, as the ship traveled through hyperspace toward an uncertain fate, Marcus sat in his quarters reviewing technical manuals on his personal terminal. To anyone who might have been watching, It would have appeared he was studying maintenance procedures for the ship's life support systems. In reality, the documents on his screen detailed weapon specifications, tactical deployment strategies, and detailed intelligence reports on Void Stalker attack patterns. His fingers moved across hidden interfaces, accessing communication channels that didn't officially exist. Brief, encrypted messages flowed back and forth, confirming details that would have shocked his crewmates if they had been able to understand their significance. But Marcus Chen had spent years perfecting the art of hiding in plain sight, and tomorrow would determine whether that careful preparation had been worth the effort. As the Stellar Wanderer dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442b system, the bridge crew immediately noticed something was wrong. The mining colony's orbital stations hung dark and silent against the backdrop of stars, their running lights extinguished and their communication arrays destroyed. Debris floated in scattered clouds around the mining platforms, evidence of a violent attack. "By the void," whispered Captain Vextar, her scales shifting to deep black with stress. "We're too late." The sensor operator, a multi-eyed Arctarian named Plex, worked frantically at his console. "I'm detecting massive hull breaches on all 3 orbital platforms. The surface installations... Captain, I'm reading minimal life signs, but the pattern is wrong. It looks like the survivors are being held in one central location." "Prisoners," Gorvash growled, his massive hands clenching into fists. "Someone is keeping them alive for a reason." As if summoned by their worst fears, new contacts appeared on the sensor display. 3 ships of unknown configuration emerged from behind the planet's largest moon, their hulls a disturbing black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The vessels moved with an unsettling organic quality, as if they were alive rather than constructed. "Void Stalkers," breathed Captain Vextar, her voice barely audible. The alien ships moved with predatory grace, clearly aware of the merchant vessel's arrival, but showing no haste to attack. They seemed to be studying their prey, evaluating the best approach for another hunt. On the bridge, the crew watched in growing horror as the reality of their situation became clear. They were alone, outnumbered, and outgunned, facing an enemy that had never been known to leave survivors. In the cargo hold, Marcus Chen checked his weapon one final time and prepared to reveal exactly why that reputation was about to change. The Voidstalker ships held their positions like patient predators, their organic-looking hulls pulsing with an eerie bioluminescence. Captain Vextar's scales had turned completely black, a color that indicated mortal terror among her people. Her clawed hands shook as she gripped the command console, trying to maintain some semblance of authority even as her crew looked to her for salvation she couldn't provide. "Communications," she managed to croak. "Try to raise them. Maybe we can negotiate." Plex, the multi-eyed sensor operator, worked frantically at his station. "I'm trying, Captain, but they're not responding to any standard frequencies. Wait." His numerous eyes widened in alarm. "Captain, I'm picking up something else. There are human life signs on the lead Voidstalker vessel." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of ship systems. The implications were horrifying. If humans were aboard the enemy ships, it meant either collaboration or something far worse. "Could they be prisoners?" asked Clix, his crystalline form dim with fear. "Negative," Plex replied, his voice trembling. "The biosignatures show they're on the bridge, in command positions. Captain, I think humans are controlling those ships." In the cargo bay, Marcus had finished his preparations. His standard gray jumpsuit had been replaced with something that looked deceptively similar, but was actually constructed from advanced polymer fibers that could stop most small arms fire. His sidearm had been joined by several other weapons that seemed far too sophisticated for a maintenance worker to possess. But the most dramatic change was in Marcus himself. The quiet, unassuming man who had endured days of alien mockery was gone, replaced by someone who moved with the deadly precision of an apex predator. He made his way to the bridge with swift, silent steps. The crew was so focused on the approaching threat that none of them noticed his arrival until he spoke. "Captain Vextar," Marcus said, his voice carrying an authority that hadn't been there before. "I need you to open a communication channel to the lead Void Stalker vessel." The reptilian captain turned, her black scales shifting to confused purple as she took in Marcus's transformed appearance. "What are you doing here? This is a restricted area during combat alerts." "Open the channel," Marcus repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. Something in his bearing made the captain comply despite her confusion. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the Void Stalker vessel. What they saw there defied all expectation. Instead of the monstrous aliens they had expected, three figures in dark, form-fitting armor stood at the alien controls. When they removed their helmets, human faces were revealed, though their expressions were cold and predatory in a way that spoke of terrible choices made long ago. Well, said the lead figure, a woman with scars across her face and eyes like chips of ice. "Marcus Chen. We were wondering when you'd show up." The alien crew of the Stellar Wanderer stared in shock, not just at the revelation that humans were indeed controlling the Void Stalker ships, but at the obvious recognition between Marcus and these pirates. Gorvash's massive frame tensed as he began to understand that there was far more to their quiet maintenance worker than any of them had suspected. "Hello, Sarah," Marcus replied calmly. "Still playing with stolen toys, I see." The scarred woman laughed, a sound without warmth or humor. "These aren't toys, old friend. These are tools of liberation. Humanity doesn't need to bow and scrape to these alien parasites anymore. We've found something better." "You've found slavery," Marcus corrected. "Those ships are controlling you as much as you're controlling them. But we both know that's not really why you're here." Sarah's expression hardened. "You're right. We're here for you, Marcus. The organization wants its pet weapon back. You've been playing house with these Xenos long enough." Captain Vexatar found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Marcus, who are these people? How do they know you?" Before Marcus could answer, Clix chittered nervously. "Wait, did she call him a weapon? What does that mean?" Sarah's cold smile widened. "Oh, they don't know, do they? Your crewmates have no idea what's been sharing their ship all this time." She leaned closer to the camera, her scarred features filling the screen. "Allow me to introduce Commander Marcus Chen, formerly of the Terran Strategic Operations Division. Codename, Reaper. Confirmed kills, classified, but let's just say it's a very large number." The aliens stared at Marcus in growing horror and disbelief. The quiet man who had endured their mockery, who had fixed their equipment and stayed out of their way, was apparently one of the most dangerous humans alive. "That's impossible!" Drax stamped his hoof against the deck. "He's just a maintenance worker. I've seen him repair replicators and clean filters. He's nothing special." "Nothing special?" Sarah laughed again. "Marcus Chen single-handedly ended the Krillian Rebellion. He infiltrated Hegemony High Command and assassinated 12 sector governors in one night. He's the reason the corporate wars ended with humanity still independent." "And you thought he was a janitor?" Marcus remained calm throughout this revelation, his expression never changing. "Sarah, you have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system before I take action." The scarred woman's smile faltered. Even through the communication link, she could sense something in Marcus's tone that reminded her of old nightmares. "You're outnumbered, Marcus. 3 ships, full crews, and weapons that can crack planets. You have a broken-down merchant vessel and a crew of aliens who are probably ready to space you the moment they recover from the shock." 20 seconds, Marcus said quietly. On the bridge of the merchant vessel, The alien crew was struggling to process what they were learning. Their quiet, harmless human crewmate was apparently a legendary figure whose name was whispered in the dark corners of the galaxy. Stories they had dismissed as human propaganda suddenly took on terrifying new meaning. "This has to be some kind of mistake," Flux bubbled nervously. "The human we know couldn't hurt anyone. He's quiet, peaceful, boring." 10 seconds, Marcus announced. Sarah's confidence began to waver. She remembered too well what Marcus was capable of when he decided that talking time was over. "Marcus, be reasonable. Join us and we'll let your alien friends leave safely. Refuse, and we'll take you anyway, but everyone else dies." 5 seconds. "You always were too sentimental about collateral damage," Sarah snarled. "Fine. If you want to play the hero, let's see how heroic you feel when we start vaporizing your friends." "Time's up." Marcus moved to a console that the crew had never seen him use before, his fingers dancing across controls that should have been locked to anyone below command rank. Somehow his biometrics were already in the system, granting him access to functions that made Captain Vextar's scales shift to shocked white. "Impossible," she breathed. "Those are classified military systems. How do you have command authorization codes?" "Because I helped design them," Marcus replied absently as he worked. "Computer, implement Protocol 77 Alpha. Authorization, Chen, Marcus, Commander, service number classified." The ship's computer responded with a voice none of them had heard before, crisp and military in tone. "Protocol 77 Alpha acknowledged. All systems transferring to combat configuration. Stealth mode engaged. Weapons hot." Around them, the stellar wanderer began to transform. Panels slid away to reveal weapon systems that shouldn't have existed on a merchant vessel. The ordinary-looking cargo ship shed its disguise like a snake molting its skin, revealing the sleek, deadly lines of a purpose-built warship. The engine output tripled, the shields strengthened to military grade, and targeting systems that belonged on a battle cruiser came online. "What in the void?" Gorvash whispered, his 4 eyes wide with amazement. "The ship," Captain Vextar stammered. This isn't possible. We've been flying a stealth warship this entire time?" Marcus finally turned from his console, and the aliens saw something in his eyes that made them all take an involuntary step backward. The quiet, harmless human was gone, replaced by something that looked human, but felt like concentrated death. "The Stellar Wanderer is a deep-cover operations vessel," he explained calmly. "Its mission was to monitor Outer Rim activities and gather intelligence on emerging threats. My mission was to blend in with the crew and observe. Unfortunately, circumstances have changed." On the main screen, Sarah's face had gone pale as her ship's sensors registered the transformation taking place. The harmless merchant vessel had become something that her stolen Void Stalker technology recognized as a serious threat. "That's not possible," she breathed. "The Reaper was destroyed during the Hegemony War." "No," Marcus corrected, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "The Reaper was retrofitted and reassigned. And Sarah, you should have taken my offer to leave." The communications channel went dead as the Void Stalker ships began moving into attack formation. But now the odds had changed dramatically. Instead of 3 Predator ships stalking helpless prey, they faced something that had been designed specifically to hunt things like them. "Marcus," Captain Vextar said carefully, her scales shifting through a spectrum of colors as she tried to process everything that had happened. "What exactly are you?" Marcus checked his weapons one final time and moved toward what had appeared to be a maintenance closet, but was now revealed as an armory that would have impressed a planetary defense force. "I'm the thing that hunts monsters," he replied simply. "And those ships out there just made the mistake of thinking they were the scariest thing in this system." The bridge erupted in alarms as the Void Stalker vessels opened fire, their organic weapons sending streams of corrosive energy toward the transformed merchant ship. But Marcus was already moving, his hands working controls with inhuman speed and precision. The ship danced between the incoming fire like a leaf in the wind, its movements defying what should have been possible for a vessel of its size. "All crew to battle stations," Marcus announced over the ship's intercom. "This is going to get interesting," as the aliens scrambled to positions they had never needed to use before. They began to understand that their quiet human crewmate was about to show them exactly why humanity had earned its place among the stars. The time for mockery and assumptions was over. The Reaper had awakened, and the galaxy was about to remember why that name inspired fear in the hearts of humanity's enemies. The space battle that erupted around Kepler 442b was unlike anything the alien crew had ever witnessed. The three Void Stalker ships moved with predatory grace, their bioorganic hulls rippling as they fired weapons that seemed to bend space itself. Streams of corrosive energy reached across the void, capable of eating through conventional ship armor like acid through paper. But Marcus and the transformed Stellar Wanderer danced between the attacks with impossible precision. "How is he doing this?" Clix chittered in amazement, his crystalline form reflecting the lights from the tactical display. "The computational requirements for those maneuvers should be beyond any single pilot's capability." Captain Vextar watched the navigation display in stunned silence, her scales cycling through colors that had no names. The ship was performing maneuvers that violated everything she knew about physics and piloting. They weren't just avoiding the incoming fire, they were somehow predicting where the next shots would be fired and moving to avoid them before the enemy weapons had even charged. "It's not just piloting," Marcus said calmly, his hands moving across multiple control interfaces simultaneously. "The ship's AI is integrated with my neural implants. We're not just working together, we're thinking together." "Neural implants," Gorvash rumbled, his massive frame tense with newfound respect. "I thought humans banned that technology after the AI wars." "Officially, yes," Marcus replied, as he executed a maneuver that brought them within striking distance of the lead Void Stalker vessel. "But sometimes you need monsters to fight monsters." The Stellar Wanderer unleashed its first attack, and the aliens finally understood the true extent of what they had been traveling in. The weapons weren't just advanced, they were revolutionary. Instead of conventional energy beams or projectiles, the ship fired something that looked like controlled gravity wells. The first Void Stalker ship found its hull compressed to a tenth of its original size in less than 2 seconds. "Gravitational collapse weapons," breathed Plex, his multiple eyes wide with terror and awe. "Those are theoretical. They don't exist." "They do now," Marcus said grimly. "Human military research has come a long way since we joined the galactic community. We learned that being underestimated is sometimes an advantage." The remaining 2 Void Stalker vessels split up, trying to flank the transformed merchant ship. Their bioorganic hulls pulsed with increasing bioluminescence as they channeled more power into their weapons systems. The lead ship, still under Sarah's command, opened a communication channel. "Impressive, Marcus," Sarah's voice carried across the bridge, though her earlier confidence had been replaced by something approaching desperation. "But you can't fight both of us at once. Surrender now, and we'll make your death quick." "Counter-offer," Marcus replied as he targeted both ships simultaneously. "Surrender now, and I'll let you live long enough to stand trial." Sarah's scarred face twisted with rage. "You always were too arrogant. Let's see how your fancy toys work against real Void Stalker technology." The remaining enemy ships began to change, their bioorganic hulls flowing like liquid as they reconfigured themselves for maximum combat efficiency. Weapons pods emerged from what had seemed like smooth hull plating, and the ship's energy signatures spiked beyond anything the sensors had recorded before. "They're transforming," Flux observed, his gelatinous form rippling with nervous energy. The biomechanical integration is more advanced than our intelligence suggested. Marcus nodded grimly. The Void Stalkers don't just build ships, they grow them, and they're parasitic. Those vessels are learning from every battle, becoming more efficient killers. The transformed enemy ships attacked with renewed fury, their weapons firing in perfect coordination. The space around the Stellar Wanderer became a web of destructive energy, forcing Marcus to push both himself and the ship beyond normal operational limits. Warning alarms began sounding as systems strained under the extreme maneuvers. "Hull integrity at 70%, announced the ship's computer in its crisp military tone. "Recommending tactical withdrawal." "Negative," Marcus replied, his hands never pausing in their complex dance across the controls. "We have colonists depending on us. No retreat." It was then that the alien crew truly began to understand what they were seeing. This wasn't just a human fighting for his life. This was someone who would rather die than abandon innocent people. The quiet maintenance worker they had mocked was revealing himself to be the embodiment of everything they had been told about human determination and sacrifice. "Marcus," Captain Vexitar said quietly, her scales now a deep blue that indicated profound respect among her people. "My crew and I owe you an apology. We misjudged you completely." "Apologies later," Marcus grunted as he rolled the ship through a series of evasive maneuvers that should have torn it apart. "Right now, I need you all to do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you. Can you handle that?" "Yes, sir," came the immediate response from every crew member, their earlier mockery forgotten in the face of Marcus's obvious expertise. "Good. Clicks, I need you to reroute all secondary power to the forward gravitational projectors. Gorvash, those muscles aren't just for show. There's a manual targeting system behind that panel that requires physical strength to operate. Plex, use those eyes of yours to track both enemy ships simultaneously and feed targeting data directly to my console." The aliens moved with purpose they had never felt before, each of them finally understanding their role in something greater than themselves. For the first time since the battle began, they felt like they might actually have a chance. Marcus waited until both enemy ships had committed to a coordinated attack run, their bioorganic hulls glowing with charging weapons. At the last possible second, he activated a system none of them had known existed. "Deploying hunter-killer drones," he announced. Sections of the ship's hull opened to reveal launch bays that had been perfectly concealed. Dozens of small, sleek craft emerged, each one moving with the same impossible precision as their mothership. The drones spread out in a complex formation, their own weapons charging. "Those aren't drones," Drax realized, his equine features showing amazement. "They're thinking. Each one is an artificial intelligence." "AI-controlled weapons were banned by the Galactic Accords," Flux protested. "The Galactic Accords were written by species who hadn't learned to integrate consciousness with technology safely," Marcus replied. "Humans took a different path." The hunter-killer drones engaged both Void Stalker ships simultaneously, their coordinated attack overwhelming the enemy vessel's ability to respond. But these weren't mindless machines. Each drone adapted its tactics in real time, learning from the enemy's responses and evolving new strategies on the fly. The second Void Stalker ship, caught between the drones and the Stellar Wanderer, tried to retreat. It didn't make it 50 kilometers before gravitational collapse weapons reduced it to a sphere of compressed matter no larger than a shuttlecraft. Sarah's ship, now alone and surrounded, made one final desperate gambit. Instead of fighting, it began transmitting a surrender signal. But Marcus's expression remained grim. "Don't trust it," he warned the crew. "Void Stalker ships have a self-destruct mechanism that can take out everything within a light second. She's going to try to take us with her." As if to confirm his words, the bioorganic hull of Sarah's ship began to pulse with an ominous rhythm, its bioluminescence building toward what was clearly a catastrophic overload. "All stop," Marcus commanded. "Emergency jump preparation. We're leaving the system." "What about the colonists?" Captain Vextar asked, her scales showing the conflict between survival and duty. Marcus was already working on a solution, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to operate multiple systems simultaneously. "The hunter-killer drones will stay behind. They'll extract the survivors and rendezvous with us at the outer system marker." "But the explosion will destroy them," Clix protested. "No," Marcus said with quiet confidence. "They're smarter than that. Trust me." The Stellar Wanderer engaged its jump drive just as Sarah's ship reached critical overload. Space-time twisted around them as they escaped into hyperspace, leaving behind an expanding sphere of destruction that would have vaporized planets. But Marcus had been right about the drones. Instead of fleeing, they had quickly calculated the explosion's effects and positioned themselves to use the destructive energy as a power source. When the blast wave hit them, they absorbed its energy and converted it into the power needed to rescue the colonists and follow their mothership to safety. 8 hours later, in the relative safety of hyperspace, the alien crew sat in stunned silence as they tried to process everything they had witnessed. Their quiet human crewmate had revealed himself to be not just a skilled warrior, but the pilot of a ship that represented technology decades ahead of anything they thought existed. "Marcus," Captain Vextar said finally, her scales a deep purple of profound respect. "What happens now?" Marcus, who had returned to his normal maintenance worker appearance, seemed almost like a different person from the deadly commander they had witnessed in battle. "Now we deliver the medical supplies to the colonists, file our report, and continue our mission." "Our mission? There are more Void Stalker fleets out there," Marcus explained quietly. "And more humans like Sarah who think the solution to humanity's problems is to become monsters themselves. Someone needs to stop them before they drag our species into a war that will consume the galaxy." "And that someone is you?" asked Gorvash, his massive frame no longer seeming as imposing as it once had. Marcus shrugged, the gesture so ordinary it seemed almost absurd after everything they had seen. "I'm just a maintenance worker who happens to be good at fixing problems. Some problems just happen to be more complicated than others." As the ship continued through hyperspace toward their next destination, the alien crew began to understand that they hadn't just witnessed a battle. They had seen the emergence of something new in the galaxy. A human willing to carry any burden, pay any price, to protect both his own species and the innocent among all others. The quiet human they had mocked was gone forever, replaced by someone they now recognized as exactly what he had claimed to be, a guardian, a protector, and when necessary, the Reaper himself. 3 weeks had passed since the battle at Kepler 442b, and the rescued colonists had been safely delivered to the nearest medical facility. The Stellar Wanderer, now openly operating in its true configuration as a deep-cover military vessel, continued its patrol of the Outer Rim territories. But the relationship between Marcus and his alien crewmates had changed in ways that none of them could have anticipated. Where once they had seen a quiet maintenance worker, they now observed a man carrying burdens that would have crushed lesser individuals. The aliens had begun to notice things they had missed before. The way Marcus sometimes stared into space with haunted eyes, the precise military bearing that emerged when he thought no one was watching, and the careful way he monitored galactic news feeds for reports that might indicate new threats. Captain Vextar found herself studying human psychology texts, trying to understand what created individuals like Marcus. Her research had revealed disturbing truths about humanity's recent history. The corporate wars that had nearly destroyed Earth's colonies, the hegemony invasion that had threatened human independence, and the terrible choices ordinary people had been forced to make to ensure their species' survival. The psychological profiles are fascinating, she confided to her senior officers during a private briefing. Humans like Marcus aren't born. They're forged by circumstances that would break most other species. Their capacity for self-sacrifice is both admirable and terrifying. Gorvash, whose warrior culture valued strength above all else, had developed a grudging respect that bordered on reverence. "I have fought beside the greatest warriors of my people," he rumbled during one of their discussions. "But I have never seen anything like what the human displayed. He didn't fight for glory or conquest. He fought because others needed protection." The ship's operations had also evolved. Marcus no longer pretended to be merely a maintenance worker, though he still performed those duties with the same quiet efficiency. Instead, he had taken on an informal role as tactical advisor, helping the crew understand threats they might encounter and training them to respond more effectively. Klix had become particularly interested in human military history. His crystalline form often found studying records of Earth's various conflicts. "The patterns are disturbing," he observed to the others. "Humanity's wars aren't fought for territory or resources. They're fought for principles. This makes them both more reasonable and more dangerous than any other species we've encountered." It was during one of these peaceful interludes that their next crisis emerged. The ship's communication array detected a priority transmission from Earth, encrypted with codes that made Marcus's expression grow grave as he decoded the message. "Captain Vexistar," Marcus said formally, his tone immediately alerting the bridge crew that something serious was developing. "I need to speak with you privately." In the captain's ready room, Marcus activated privacy screens and jamming fields that the aliens hadn't known their ship possessed. "We have a problem," he began without preamble. "Intelligence indicates that the Void Stalker technology we encountered isn't just stolen. It's being mass-produced." Captain Vextar's scales shifted to alarmed orange. "Mass-produced by whom?" "That's the problem. The manufacturing signatures match facilities on 17 different worlds, spanning 8 different star systems. Someone with massive resources is building a fleet, and they're using corrupted humans as crews." The implications were staggering. A fleet of Void Stalker vessels could threaten entire sectors of space, and if they were crewed by humans who had abandoned their principles, the results would be catastrophic. "What are your orders?" Captain Vexitar asked, her military training recognizing the gravity of the situation. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "My orders are to investigate and report back. But I think we both know that won't be enough. If this fleet launches a coordinated attack, the casualties will be measured in billions." "Then what do you propose?" "We stop them," Marcus said simply. "All of them." Captain Vextar stared at him in amazement. "Marcus, you're talking about taking on a fleet of unknown size with a single ship, regardless of how advanced it might be. That's not a mission. It's suicide." "Maybe," Marcus acknowledged. "But sometimes one person in the right place at the right time can change everything. And I've been preparing for this possibility for years." Over the next several hours, Marcus revealed the full extent of his preparations. Hidden throughout the galaxy were supply caches, safe houses, and allies who could be activated with a single coded transmission. The quiet maintenance worker had spent years building a network that could respond to exactly this kind of threat. "You've been planning this," Captain Vextar realized. "Not just responding to intelligence, but actively preparing for a war that might never come." "A war that was always going to come," Marcus corrected. Humanity's integration into galactic civilization was never going to be smooth. There were always going to be humans who thought the answer was to conquer rather than cooperate. I've just been trying to make sure that when they made their move, someone would be ready to stop them. The alien crew was gathered for a full briefing, and Marcus laid out the situation with brutal honesty. The enemy fleet was massive, well-equipped, and strategically positioned to strike at the heart of galactic civilization. Their leaders were humans who had embraced the Void Stalker philosophy of predation and domination. "Why are you telling us this?" asked Flux, his gelatinous form rippling with nervous energy. "Surely this is a human problem that requires human solutions." Marcus shook his head. "This stopped being just a human problem the moment they started using Void Stalker technology. If they succeed, every species in the galaxy will suffer. This is about protecting everyone." "So what do you need from us?" asked Plex, his multiple eyes focused intently on Marcus. "I need you to understand that what happens next might require all of us to make choices we never thought we'd have to make," Marcus replied carefully. "I can't order any of you to follow me into this, but I can ask you to help me save billions of innocent lives." The response was immediate and unanimous. Every member of the crew volunteered to join Marcus's mission, despite the obvious dangers. The quiet human who had endured their mockery had earned their complete loyalty through his actions and his willingness to sacrifice everything for others. "Then we'll need to upgrade the ship," Marcus said, his tactical mind already working on solutions. "The hunter-killer drones will need enhanced capabilities. Our weapons will need more power, and we'll need to install systems that don't officially exist." The next phase of their mission took them to a hidden facility in an asteroid field that didn't appear on any official charts. The base, constructed entirely by automated systems, contained technology that represented decades of secret human research and development. "This is impossible," breathed Captain Vextar as they docked with the facility. "The engineering required to build this in secret would require resources beyond most planetary governments." "Humanity has been busy," Marcus replied with a slight smile. "We learned early that being underestimated was an advantage, so we've worked hard to maintain that perception while building the capabilities we might need." The upgrades to the Stellar Wanderer were extensive and revolutionary. New weapons systems that manipulated fundamental forces, defensive shields that existed partially outside normal space-time, and AI systems that pushed the boundaries of consciousness itself. When they emerged from the hidden facility, they were no longer piloting a single ship, but commanding a weapon system that represented humanity's ultimate response to existential threats. "The enemy fleet is gathering at the Nexus station," Marcus announced as they reviewed the latest intelligence. "It's a perfect target for their purposes. A major trade hub with representatives from dozens of species, lightly defended and symbolically significant." "How long do we have?" asked Gorvash. 6 days before they launch their attack," Marcus replied. "We need to be in position before then." As the upgraded Stellar Wanderer moved through hyperspace toward what would likely be their final battle, Marcus gathered his crew for one last conversation. "I want you all to understand something," he began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "When we arrive at the Nexus station, we'll be facing odds that no rational analysis would consider survivable. The enemy will have more ships, more weapons, and more personnel than we can hope to match." "Then how do we win?" asked Clix. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since they had known him, it was the expression of someone who had found peace with an impossible choice. "We don't win by being stronger," he explained. "We win by being willing to pay prices our enemies won't pay. We win by being willing to sacrifice everything for people we've never met. We win by being human." The alien crew looked at each other, finally understanding what they had stumbled into when they took on a quiet maintenance worker who called himself Marcus Chen. They weren't just crew members anymore. They were witnesses to something that would define not just humanity's place in the galaxy, but the future of civilization itself. As they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus station system, they could see the enemy fleet arrayed in perfect attack formation, over 200 ships of various configurations, all pulsing with the distinctive bioluminescence of Void Stalker technology. It was a force capable of conquering star systems. "All hands to battle stations," Marcus announced calmly. "Let's show them what happens when humanity's monsters decide to protect instead of prey." The final battle was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same.